And now, a special presentation of Puck Drop.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Puck Drop. We are here live at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. My name is Ryan Lai. Once again, I'm joined with Jacob Gorin and Jordan Cooper. And we also have two very special guests, play-by-play Matt Loughlin for New Jersey Devils Radio, and of course, former star New Jersey Devil and current color commentator for the New Jersey Devils on MSG Network is the great Ken Daneyko. So guys, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
So we're going to now send it to Jordan.
Yep. Ken, my first question is for you. At the start of the season, you said the Devils looked like a different kind of team. What is the difference between the red-hot team we're seeing now and the teams of the past few years?
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of things, obviously. And we thought they were going to be better last year. Obviously, there's circumstances and the injuries to goalies, and without making excuses. But having said that, maturity, the depth that was added, the young 2, 3, 4-year players like the Heischers and the Brats, and even though they had pretty good seasons under difficult circumstances last year, and the Hugheses, they've taken their game to another level. They're ready for prime time, as you like to say in that hockey. And for me, though, it always comes down to playing like a team, playing desperate, playing with urgency. I didn't see enough of that over the last 3 years, and sometimes that goes hand in hand with just maturing as a player, understanding what it takes to win. And now they're all on the same page. They've got chemistry, but the depth, the chemistry, everybody, doing all the little things it takes to win. It's not just putting the puck in the net. It's not just making a play. Yeah, that's important. And making a save for the goaltender is obviously very important. But it's understanding, for me anyway, situational play, time on the game left, score of the game, where now they're making the right plays at the right time. If it's a 1-on-3 and you're up 4-2, you don't need to try to beat the guy. You play it simple. You get it due. All those kinds of things. So in a roundabout way, a lot of things are better here. But their attitude and their mentality, Matt, they're starting to believe in themselves when it comes down
Well,
to it.
confidence is such a huge part of any team's success. But I think the reason the Devils are a surprise team this year is because last year was such a terrible year. They could score last year. They had no problem scoring. Jack Hughes was a point a game. Jesper Bratt had a breakout year. Nico Hischier was terrific. But all that got lost. I think if they had goaltending and avoided some injuries last year, they would have been a team that would have threatened but probably fallen short of a playoff spot. So this wouldn't have been a surprise. People would have left last season saying, hey, they're ready to take off. But because it was so bad, no one really knew what to expect. But I think this is part of the maturation process that you said.
And wouldn't you agree, Matty? We talk about resiliency, and I talk about composure in their own zone in particular. Yeah, they could score last year, and you're absolutely right on everything you said. I'm in agreement with, but they don't panic. And that's part of maturity, right? They don't panic with the puck. I've often said it's a one-goal league, meaning a lot of games are going to be won by 1 goal or lost by 1 goal. Well, they've won 4 straight games by 1 goal, and that wasn't the norm for the last handful of years, where they found ways to lose a tough game where they played pretty well. Now they bend, they don't break, and they win those tight battles, which is imperative in this league because the competitive balance is at an all-time high as far as how good every team is and how close they are to each other. It's a bounce, a break, yeah, you need those too. But for me, big differences. They're so much more composed now, understanding the situation.
Ken, like you said, they're just playing so much more connected, I feel like. In years past, you didn't get the sense that they really felt like a team. Like, obviously they were a team, but on the ice, it didn't look like they really had the chemistry, because lines were changing around so much. Because when you lose, a lot of times you change the lines, but now they have a chance to finally build some chemistry and look a lot more connected on the ice. And I think a large part of that is the defensemen. I think they've done such a great job moving the puck out with the breakouts. And Matt, 5 of the 6 teams' regulars on defense have been brought in by Tom Fitzgerald since he's taken over. What have you thought about how he has built this blue line?
It's been brilliant, right? I mean, first off, he convinces Dougie Hamilton that this is a place that he should play the rest of his career, that there are a lot of good things happening. And so that was a big move. That really wasn't first. First was getting Jonas Siegenthaler, right? Nobody knew what to expect off that deal. It was for a draft choice. He had been buried in Washington, wasn't playing, but the Devils saw his draft position, his underlying size and skill, and thought he would have an opportunity to display that here. So Tommy does a great job with that deal. He winds up signing Dougie Hamilton, and then this summer he completes the hat trick by acquiring John Marino in a deal for Ty Smith and a draft choice. So he doesn't give up much to get two solid defensive defensemen. He gives up a lot of money, but that's okay. Dougie's playing great. To get an offensive defenseman who's strong on the defensive side as well. So he's done a marvelous job making this a deeper, harder to play against, but quicker defense, getting the puck out of their zone, as you mentioned, tape-to-tape passes. Let's get the offense cooking.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry to interrupt. I totally agree with what Tom has done. You don't know how these things are going to work out, but you have to foreshadow and see, well, we've got to be bigger on defense. That doesn't mean just physicality. Big mobile guys that take up space, have good sticks. And then when you add a Siegenthaler and a Dougie Hamilton, who's an elite defensive defenseman in the game, but has been terrific in both ends of the rink thus far.
Yeah.
I was really enjoying his time here. You talk about that chemistry. Then you had John Marino. None of us could have expected him to be as good as he has been. He hasn't been good. He's been outstanding. And it's kind of solidified the top six, right? They all have good pairings. All coaches want to keep lines together and pairings together. It just doesn't materialize that way because they've got to show they should be together, right?
Exactly.
I sometimes hear fans get up and in an uproar. Well, they want them together, but a lot of times it takes time. So you got to mix and match and find out what works for you, even in the season or the start of the season. But it's working right now, and I'm sure they're going to mix and match lines every once in a while. Even in game, they've made some great adjustments when it wasn't kind of going. I think it was a couple games going to go against Calgary. They tweak some lines, and all of a sudden they get a spark.
Yeah.
But then they go back to those lines. So a lot of good things from the coaching staff, certainly from Tom Fitzgerald as well.
One line that we've seen really progress brilliantly is the BMW line. The McLeod line with Wood, that's just been a phenomenal line. What would you say in terms of their contribution this year?
Well, we call them on the radio side the impact line, right? BMW is a beautiful automobile, but they have an impact both offensively and defensively. I think one of the strengths of the Devils this year is that there isn't just one line. I think if you look at the Devils, we know that Nico Hischier is a developing star, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt. But there's not that Connor McDavid at the top of the list for the Devils. But as we record this, that top line has scored 13 goals. Then they have two lines that have scored 9 goals, and the final line has scored 7. So they're getting balanced scoring. Those three guys, though, in particular, Nate Bastian, Miles Wood, Michael McLeod, they have enjoyed playing with each other. They have realized what it takes to stay in the National Hockey League. You know, Mike's a first-round pick. Nate's a second-round pick. Miles was selected 100th overall. They came in with some offensive upside. This is a tough league. This guy here was an offensive star.
Believe it or not, but you have to find a role, as you know.
And these guys have done it. And not everyone is able to say, oh, I used to score goals, now I'm not. Well, I'm still going to try to score goals. They have found a way to stay in this league, and they're young, compete. They've got speed to burn. They play a physical style, and they jump on players. Their forechecking is incredible.
A lot of times, fourth lines, we always talk about wanting to bring energy, change momentum. But if they're producing offensively, championship years, I was fortunate and grateful enough to be on. Our fourth line was the same. Not only were they physical, tough, make life difficult on defensemen, but they could score. So now we're seeing that from the impact line, BMW line, because these guys are producing offensively. That makes your team that much more dangerous. When you got 4 lines, because those top players are going to be the focus in pregame for the opposition's coaches, and they're going to say, we've got to stop these guys. But now if you got your fourth line winning your games, well, that makes you a dangerous team.
I was going to say it's a great key to success from especially, you remember Boyle as a very solid fourth line center. And now as we've moved on past that period of time, this fourth line has really helped engineer a great hockey team.
Oh, they're balanced right now. Got to keep it going. We keep it in perspective, Matty. It's a great start, but there's going to be hiccups along the way. There's going to be bumps in the road. But I think this team is much more well-equipped to handle some of the adversity this season, right?
Yeah, and I don't think what they're doing is unsustainable, right? They're not shooting at an incredibly high percentage. Their power play, as good as it is, isn't off the charts. It's not in the top 3. and those numbers would regress to the mean. And I don't think that's the case. I think what they're doing is sustainable.
And one thing about the team this year that reminds me of the team that made the playoffs in 2017-18, they have the depth. In years past, a lot of times you have a player gets injured, and all of a sudden you're done because you don't have the depth to fill in the spot. But even early on, we're seeing a guy like Andre Palat got hurt after 6 games. Fabian Zetterlund steps right into that spot, and he's playing fantastic. And that was also getting scoring from all over the lineup. They're also getting scoring, though, from their top guys, of course. Daneyko leads the team in goals. Ken, as a former player yourself, many people have praised Nico Hischier as being just a great captain and leader in the organization. From your vantage point, what do you think makes him such a great leader?
Well, he leads by example. You hear that term a lot. And he's starting to grow into that leadership. He's still got a ways to go, but his play on the ice, his practice habits, his mentality, you can just tell he lives, breathes, sleeps hockey, the winning side of it. He's that type of guy that everything he does, whether it's in practice, 200-foot player doing all the little things during a game, that resonates on your bench. That's a leader, a guy that is willing to do whatever it takes to win hockey games. I know you think every player is going to do that, but that's not always the case. And yes, he was a number 1 overall pick and highly skilled, but he's really growing in that leadership. And I even think from the talking side in the locker room where you need to stand up and say something every once in a while, that's kind of not his way, I would think, but I think that's coming too, right, Matty? I would believe. Scott Stevens, as ferocious as he was, as good of a captain as he was, he led by example. People think he was real talkative. He was not. He'd stand up when something needed to be said, he would say it, but it wasn't a lot. We had a lot of other guys that were more talkative. Mm-hmm. Scotty was the guy that in practice, you lose 3 games in a row, and he'd alert you on the ice in practice by bumping some guy a little extra hard and on your own team, because you hold each other accountable and saying it's not acceptable what we're doing. Well, Nico's kind of developing into that well-rounded player. Never mind his play on the ice. It's been superb right now. Yeah. Now we're seeing the offense come. But I've always said he's one of those guys, 5 games can have 1 assist, but he still has an impact in the game because he's a defenseman's dream, because he's that Selke-type player. Oh, yeah. And people are starting to take recognition. He's the Patrice Bergeron of the New Jersey Devils. And I'm not saying he's Patrice Bergeron yet, but that's high praise, and I do believe that.
Oh, he's on
getting
that
to that level.
Oh, I agree. And he's only 23, and it takes a while to be a player in this league. It takes a while to be a captain in this league, and it was all thrown on him at an early age. And there were growing pains for him personally in terms of his success on the ice. Once that started to come, now you're more comfortable. He is the best choice to be the captain. For sure.
And it was kind of foresight in what the management and coaching staff had seen when he came in the league as a young 18. You saw the maturity, you saw his preparation, you saw just the way he approaches the game, right? Like, this kid's going to be a leader. So if they stuck it on him a little early, it was for him to get acclimated.
Sure.
The team was at that spot in the organization where, well, we weren't going to win yet, right? Or win enough.
Yeah.
But grow together. You need a leader, and I agree with him, man. He's just a terrific choice.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you guys. From the fans' perspective, Nico Hischier says all the right things during the interviews. He's always the hardest working on the ice. He always keeps the puck for so long. He's always the hardest worker on the ice. So sticking with this theme of players who have been stepping up, Ken, a few years ago on NHL.com's edition of 5 Questions, you said you described yourself as a player the Devils needed, but not a star player. Who would you say resembles yourself on the team right now?
Wow, good question. I was a star in my mind, Matty, but
no, you're
in reality, I knew my skill set.
Well,
we joke around.
There were a couple of supernovas though that overshadowed in some respects.
But no, I've always said, all kidding aside, and I was grateful to play a long time here and be part of something, and I knew my role, and I was certainly told at a young age from Loughlin, what's going to make me successful, what's going to make me help the New Jersey Devils win hockey games. So sometimes as a young player, and you alluded to it, Matt, you come out of junior, you come out of college, you have a ton of skill. People don't realize, I had a lot of offense junior. Yeah, I had some toughness. Yeah, I had some defensive capabilities. Which, to get to the National Hockey League, you can't translate all that unless you skate like Scott Niedermayer. Right. You know what I mean? So you have to find a niche, a role. I found my niche, my role, and I like to continually say to fans that they're always saying, I hear this so often, I might be going off course, but so often other fans, why is this guy not up? He's way better than this guy, whether it's a fourth line player. Right? I'll tell you what, it's never the 12 best forwards and the 6 best, most skilled defensemen that make a good team. It's roles. It's everybody has to play their role to a T, and that's what makes a team. So sometimes I hire skilled guys in the minors. Eventually he'll get his shot, but in a different spot in the lineup. For me, I look at guys, I'm not even going to name a defenseman, a guy like Miles Wood.
Could be that kind of guy, yeah.
Kind of that spark plug guy in
maybe,
the trenches, maybe a Marino, maybe all kinds of
You know who I was thinking
guys.
might fill that role? Because I think he's got a big upside, but I don't know if it's superstar upside. Dawson Mercer, right? He's going to play a 200-foot game. He wins faceoffs. Defensively, he makes some mistakes. It's only his second year in the league.
I love Dawson.
He shows up every day. He's not missed a game. I think he could be that kind of a guy. I may be limiting him a little bit. No, if his number can be retired, that's pretty darn good praise. He could be that guy of the current
That's a great point, Matty. I think Mercer, look, everybody looks at just numbers, goals, assists. His will come, but he's just that player that does a little bit of everything, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's not the biggest guy, but he goes to the dirty areas. Just when you see that on a nightly basis or in practice, that's also contagious to your team, and that's why they have more depth. But it's funny we're saying a lot of forwards, but I even look like a guy like Siegenthaler. Obviously, the game was different in my era. It was more intimidating. It was physical. That was a big part of my game. But as far as just the mindset, defensive mindset, like a Siegenthaler,
it could be, for sure.
They just real good at shutting down top players and understand the game in their own zone, kind of thing. So we rattled off a lot of guys, but I guess our purpose of that is to say it just takes all kinds of characters to have a successful team.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. We're about to move on now to our next topic, which is questions not relating to the current New Jersey Devils team. But first, I have a question for you, Matt. What would you say has been the catalyst for Jesper Bratt's progression over the past 2 seasons? He has really picked himself up as a star player in this league.
Yeah, I'll use his words. We had him on, I think it was a post game, could have been an intermission, but we were talking about that. Like the last 2 years, here's the 6th round pick, and suddenly he's a superstar. And he did say that he's driven a bit by proving the critics wrong, that he didn't believe he should have been a 6th round pick. He should have been selected higher. Now, there were reasons for that. He's slight of build, and he didn't have a couple of he didn't fare well in a couple of tournaments leading up to his draft, and so you drop on the list. But he said it was to prove critics wrong, and he's gotten bigger and stronger. He works hard at his game. He spent the last 2 summers working on his shot, so he is driven to be a better player. Listen, all these guys, you can hear the noise. This is a morning skate for Arizona that's come to an end, but they still have guys out there working on their game, even though they won't play tonight. So in this league, you have to continue to get better, otherwise you wind up being passed by. But he was given some great skills that he has improved on, and he is determined to prove those critics that, and in a redraft, he would be drafted higher. But that year, he was sixth round pick.
He's really proved himself to be lethal in this league. Very hard player to stop. He's also very talented. He forechecks well. He can do it all.
He can. He ducks under checks, but you think you got him squeezed against the wall, and he goes under them.
Yeah, I was going to say what I love about Jesper Bratt. We always talk about you need size in your team, right? Even sometimes your star players. You look at the Oilers with a Draisaitl, McDavid. I'm not saying he's them. They're big guys, you know, and they can fight through checks. But when you have a little guy like Bratt, you don't see him get taken advantage of physically because of that quickness, because of that willingness to, you know, duck under checks.
Yeah.
Not afraid to go along the wall, not afraid to, but he just does it a little differently, right? Because of that quickness and speed and edge work, where big guys can't really, you know, line him up and get a good piece of him. And he, excuse me, and he thinks the game so well. Every organization has to have guys that pan out, diamonds in the rough that are 4th rounders, 6th rounders, 7th rounders that become real impactful players in the National Hockey League. You look at the Tampa Bay Lightning and why they've won Stanley Cups or won back-to-back for a couple of years there.
Current Devil
The
Hunter,
Palats,
7th round
the
pick.
Palats,
You see it in all
the
sports.
Kucherovs, who's even I think second round, whatever. I mean, or late
Yeah.
first. I can't remember.
No,
Having
second,
said
yeah.
that, other guys, the Yanni Gords, who's moved on and
Sure.
because of other
Well, it's Hall of Fame
reasons.
weekend, right? It's Hall of Fame weekend. Danny Alfredson was a 5th round selection of
That's right,
Ottawa,
there you
and he's
go.
going into the Hall of Fame. So it does happen. You have to hit on those. You got to be right with
Makes your organization deeper.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Sharon Govich is a 5th round pick.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you guys. I made this point on a previous show of ours that for the past few years, the Stanley Cup winners have had a trend of players stepping up. Like we've talked about it with Siegenthaler, we've talked about it with Mercer, and I see this trend with the Devils right now. Before, you didn't really see players stepping up, but I really see a lot of young grinders, a lot of veterans stepping into their roles. That a lot of good role players, and I think we're trend.
For me, and like I said, when you're winning, you're happy. Everybody's getting along. Everybody's playing for each other. But you can tell they're pushing each other, Matty. Like as far as, and you make a great point because there's no passengers. We've seen on a nightly basis, very rarely. We'll see a tough game here and there. It's a game mistake. Some guys are going to have tough games. I had plenty of them in my long career. But it's the bounce back and the support they're getting from their teammates as far as if you make a mistake, I'm going to cover you up. Because that's what it's all about for me. I mean, Ryan Graves, I'll use an example. He's been terrific as well. We didn't even throw him in there, and I've loved his game. He was fighting it against the Oilers when they were down 3-1. Having a little bit of a tough night, just wasn't handling the puck as well, and, you know, the turnover.
To a goal, yeah.
Well, what does he do to follow it up? An incredible game-time goal, kind of stepping out of the box, out of his norm, and making a nice little move and shoveling one home.
Bobby
right?
Orr flying
So-
through the air.
That's the difference this year, and everybody's stepping up, finding the roles. But even if you're having a tough night, don't continue to, try to do too much, although he had the moment. And I love that because he was fighting the game and then he makes a big play. That's why this team's having success right now. We're seeing that throughout the lineup.
Yeah, it's been balanced throughout. I mean, everyone, it's a trite saying, oh, everyone contributed, no passengers, blah, blah, blah. But it's true. If you look at it, there hasn't been one player, even Brendan Smith, who hasn't scored a point yet, he provides a little bit of grit that the Devils had missed. And it's another acquisition that Tommy made on the defensive side to go back to
From what I hear, a very boisterous leader in the locker room.
Right.
The intangible that media fans sometimes don't see from the outside. It's important. He's a guy, experienced guy, right, Matty? And from what I hear, he's one of the more talkative guys in the room with important things to say.
He's got the Irish gift of gab.
Yeah, but a leader.
Which I can say is an Irishman who has a gift of gab.
When you say he brings that sandpaper, a little attitude that every team needs, but he's really good. We always say, well, he's good in the locker room, he's got to do it on the ice too. Well, he brings both, but that attitude, but in the room we hear, from what I hear, and I see it. I saw it with Carolina, even in his interviews. He's a leader. He'll say the right things at the right time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think with a guy like Brendan Smith, yeah, he has those intangibles that you see in the locker room, but on the ice too, like you said, I think he might be the most physical defenseman of all the Devils defensemen, and they have a lot of big guys on defense. Hamilton and Graves are 6'6", Severson 6'2", 6'3", Marino and Siegenthaler 6'1". Smith, I think, is on the smaller side of that. He's on 6'1", 6'2", but he is all out there hitting hard, playing
Attitude,
hard.
yeah.
Block shots, gets in lanes.
Don't forget, Damon's a strong player, a lower body, so when he's physical and assertive, he's very effective and a real good defenseman. So it's a real nice, well-rounded top six right now, I believe.
With Kevin Ball waiting
to get in. That's what you need, depth, right?
Yeah.
He'll get in soon enough because injuries happen. And if you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets, I think 3 guys went down in one game.
Incredible.
We don't want to see that, but you're going to need 28, 30 guys to have success and come in, not just fill minutes, but have an impact. And the Devils think they have that outside of the top 20 right now.
So we're now going to move on to the second part of our segment now. We're going to move on to questions not relating to the current New Jersey Devils team. So I have a question for you, Ken, to get us started. How has the transition been for you from playing on the ice, being the retired big number 3 for this program, to now being the voice as the color commentator on MSG Network?
Well, I think Lou Lamorello or somebody in the organization said I never met a mic I didn't like, so I figured I'd go into broadcasting so I can laugh at myself, man. but all kidding aside, look, I wanted to stay in the game in some capacity. I didn't know whether that'd be coaching or hockey ops or whatever it may be. That always intrigued me as well at one point. But the media had mentioned to me many times, have you thought about going in the broadcast? And you're always a good interviewer. Or you always there for us when win, lose, draw after the game to kind of analyze what went wrong or what went right for your team. And I said, I hadn't really thought about it because you don't think about it. But near the end of your career, a year or two to go, that was something if I was going to stay in the game, and I wanted to stay with the Devils. This was my team. So it was kind of a natural transition, and you learn along the way from guys like Matty, guys like Stan Fischler, guys like Doc Emmerich, and the late, great Peter McDams, whatever it may be. You always get advice along the way, but it's certainly something I've really enjoyed. I'm enjoying it a lot more this year, the first 14 games, with their record.
When calling the game, do you look down and you go, wow, I was once there, and you really relate to situations that players were in when they're receiving reactions from fans or when they're communicating with the coaching staff? Do you really look down and go, I was once there, and almost, get a different view on the situation?
Oh, of course. I mean, obviously, a lot of things run through your mind because you're watching plays develop, or you're looking at the bench and seeing the coach talk to the defenseman. You're going, yeah, I remember those days. I remember. I probably know what he's saying without even seeing what he's saying. If he's giving him a little grief for the turnover in his own zone or hang on to the puck too long, Matty. And that's why I'm a believer. Look, we all root for our home team.
Of course.
We love our home team, and we want their success. I certainly do. I've been here 40 years. I want these guys to do well because I went through lean years. I went through tough times with teams and was grateful and fortunate enough to still be with teams when we were winning. And that made it even that much more gratifying. Having said that, we got to call a game. We got to be honest. I thank God there was no social media during my playing days. I just thank God, because I would have been challenging every other fan to a fight when I had a bad game.
Right.
Because I can't imagine that.
Oh, yeah.
So my point of that is, when a guy has a tough day, they're going, why aren't you ripping that guy? I'm not going to rip a player. I've been through it. I had tough nights. I didn't want to be ripped. Yes, I know you're having a tough night. I'll mention the bad play, as you will, right, Matt?
Sure. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it's more about mentioning the bad play and saying every guy goes through it. Now let's see how he gets out of it. Or complimenting the other team because they're playing hard and making good plays, right? Because and I know it's only a handful, and it's in every marketplace where fans will be down because their team lost 3-0 and they want you to rip your own players or rip your management or rip your coach. And, that for me, that's just not, you can't do that, number one. But number two, that's not what it's about for me. I'm not doing national TV where we're saying, we can say whatever we want. Yes, you got to be careful. But on the flip side, we always try to be honest, Matty. When they're struggling and not playing well, I'm going to say it. But I don't think players deserve to be ripped. They're working their tail off, going to make mistakes, get out of it. It's up to management eventually if the player's not for that team to do something about it. I know that was a long-winded answer, but I don't know what you feel about that. I love what I'm doing. It's great, but I'm just throwing in some added tidbits because I see it when our teams weren't very good. And you get it all the time, I'm sure. Oh, how come you're not ripping that guy? He's brutal. You know what I mean? I'm like, really?
Yeah, I know. I try to keep in mind, what I try to do, and just we'll mention it quickly, is if the player was sitting next to me, would he agree or disagree with me? That's why I stay away from, he's terrible.
Yeah.
He's abominable. But he made a mistake. Ryan Graves, perfect example. It was a game of redemption against Calgary, against Edmonton, but yeah, he gave the puck away. It led to a goal. You gotta say it. He didn't mean to, but it did happen. So I think you just try to be honest.
So it's just a mix of honesty and fairness, really.
Honesty and
fairness and understanding. From my perspective, you mentioned being a player for a long time and seeing what's transpiring in those. I've been through it as well. So I some tough nights, plenty of them, or bad plays, and put myself in them shoes. And if I had the broadcasters ripping me as well, don't get me wrong. We're realistic. We're hard on ourselves. All players are. Yeah. They know they made a blunder. They know they had a terrible game. We say it in a tasteful way, maybe,
yes.
Matty. Trying to.
Yes.
Better lack of
words. A velvet fist, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
But it's been fun. And I've learned a lot along the way from, like I said, Matty's and everybody, where you ask for advice along the way and be yourself. I mean, I'm passionate. I wear my emotion on my sleeve. I'm not always the most articulate. I get that. But I love the game. I think I understand the game. So it was a natural fit.
Yeah, and sticking with the broadcasting side, Matt, what has been the most memorable game you've ever called?
Nice.
Nice.
You got a lot of them, I bet.
Well, there's a lot. I was lucky. This is my 17th year when I was doing the TV side, 17th year doing the audio side of things. When I was doing the TV side of things, I was lucky enough to be with all 3 Stanley Cup championships. I haven't had a chance to call a Stanley Cup winner. Got close in 2012. But I would say the biggest game, well, the two. One is 2012, Adam Henrique in this building eliminating the Rangers for a couple of reasons. One, the Devils are going to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 2003. Secondly, I think that finally slayed the dragon of the big brother, little brother. Their Rangers won in 94. They win the cup. They end the drought, even though the Devils win 3 after that, and the Rangers haven't won any since. The fact of the matter is, Devils always played a lower role. Little brother to the big brother, right? And they're an original 6 team. I get part of it. But that's when both teams were at their height. I mean, the Rangers 2 years later went to the Stanley Cup final, lost to the Kings. And it was Lundqvist and Brodeur, and it was some rising stars and holdovers for both teams, and it was just great. And to have it in this building, this place went absolutely bonkers. And to be able to call that game would be one of the highlights for sure. The other, I wasn't doing play-by-play, but I'm a Jersey guy. I was born in Manhattan, but moved to, when I was 10
Westfield?
That's where we live now, but I moved to Sayreville in Middlesex County because my parents moved there. I had to go with them. I was only 10. I wasn't ready to live on my own. So we moved to Sayreville. Anyway, I'm a Jersey guy. I love everything about it. I think it's a misunderstood state. People just drive through it and think, what is it all about? I think it's got a lot of
the
beauty.
Parkway.
Well, there's the shore, there's mountains, there's farmland, there's a lot.
Great golf courses.
Great golf course. Oh, yeah.
Golfers.
We'll tee them up. But 95, to be honest, Dr. John McMullen brought this team to New Jersey to represent New Jersey. He was a Jersey guy, proud of what the state represents. And to be at the old building, welcoming our viewers on the old sports channel to our post-game show after they had swept Detroit, to say the championship has come to the Garden State, to celebrate from all corners, to hear that crowd, and as a Jerseyan to do that. I mean, it was great to watch the run to the Stanley Cup and all that team represented. But that moment when the horn sounded and the place exploded in joyous celebration, that to me was the number one for me.
Matty, you said 2012. I like that. For me, that goal, even when they won Adams' goal in double overtime to get past round 1 against the Florida
Against
Panthers,
Florida, yeah.
that was like I was playing. Like I was almost as excited as 95, 2000, 2003, raising the cup for me, as far as just the emotion.
Yeah.
And watching the fans and just to see the celebration, how happy everybody was on the ice and off the ice. I was no different. I was like a fan that night that was just elated.
It was an incredible moment. And to be able to call that, true joy.
My mom was at the game where they won in 95, and she always says the building she could feel it shaking. It was like an earthquake when the final buzzer sounded. And I mean, that was an impressive win. A lot of star players on that Detroit team that won 2 Stanley Cups 2 and 3 years later. Ken, do you have any, were you friendly with anyone on that team? Is there anyone else throughout the NHL that you connected with not on the New Jersey Devils throughout your career?
Well, connected, if you're asking me that I was friendly, I hated everybody I played against. And that's the God's honest truth.
That's
Didn't
the right
matter
answer.
if I grew up with them, if I was friends with them. That was my mentality. There was no friends on the ice.
A healthy
just
dose
the
of
way-
hate is a good thing.
And I might think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. Maybe it's a little different now in today's era of sports, Matty. And I didn't like anybody too much. But having said that, yes, everybody know, or a lot of people know, because I've told them story. I grew up with Mark Messier. He was a mentor of mine. I was very close with him. Hang out in the summers, travel the world together. Did him and his brother, so I was very close to the family. Used to go to their hockey schools, the Messier hockey schools they had. So I know him since 10 years old, and he was a big mentor of mine. It was very difficult when he became a New York Ranger, because it was we didn't talk for 2 years. I've told people that because it was just too big a rivalry. That's just the mentality we had. It was, you know, and that's why we loved it, because we had to compete. And when he was with Edmonton, he'd send me a note. When I was young, they were way better than us. We weren't very good. Him and Kevin Lowe would send me notes, because I knew a lot of those Oiler guys. Send me notes before the game, you know, funny ones from what we did in the summer, or good luck, you're playing well, or, you know, like, when then I was just trying to establish myself in the National Hockey League, and that all changed after he came to New York because of that rivalry, which I loved. But those were guys because I grew up in Edmonton, so a lot of the Oilers, whether it was Messier, Coffey, Lowe, even knew Wayne through Mark a lot, Gretzky, our greatest player. That was a great thrill for me. But these guys, in all honesty, after it's all said and done, you reflect. As much as you got to compete against them and stop them, and then the rivalry Rangers and Messier, they were instrumental just being around that, Matty, for me. I mean, I don't think I even realized until I really sit down and go, I watch these guys, how they handle themselves, how they conduct themselves. Yes, you need great skill, but what it took to be a pro, and those were some of the guys that really were instrumental for me along the way, even though, yeah, when we played against them, I didn't like it.
And you didn't have a Trevor Zegras to Jack Hughes.
Well, yeah, like I'd like to say that was Mark Messier at the time, but it was a different mentality by the time. It was a little more intimidation and nastiness in the game. And I've gone with the time because I love what's going on now, how the game's gone. It's still physical, but just different eras.
Yeah.
Comparing apples and oranges, I love my time. Now these kids are just so unbelievable. And yeah, they make a lot of good friendships. You make a lot of good friendships in hockey. But yeah, all my close friends are the guys I bonded with that I won 3 cups with. Well, we'll always have that special bond, the Brelands and the Stevens and Niedermeyers and Broders, and we can go on down the list. You make great friends and contacts within your own team, but you know, those are some of the contacts of different people we throw out there. As far as I think I answered your question.
Well, obviously, Ken grew up in Canada, but Matt, you said you grew up in New York, New Jersey, and when you were in New Jersey for a large portion of your childhood, the Devils weren't here. So what inspired your love of hockey?
So I did grow up a Rangers fan, not going to lie. They were the only team that was in the National Hockey League as I was growing up. Then the Islanders came on board, but they were far enough away. As a Jersey guy, my dad's a great Rangers fan. But as the Devils came to New Jersey and I started to cover them a little bit more, this was before I got paid to do so, I started to embrace what they meant. Now, there was a lot of losing, as Kenny alluded to, in the early years, but it was still our team. And then as I came on board, working for the old sports channel, Kenny talks about the competitiveness of I didn't like that guy, and I didn't talk to him for 2 years, Messier, even though I'm good buddies with him. All of a sudden, you start to cover a team, and there's a little pride in what the team is doing. And you get a little ticked when the other team is kind of looking down at, oh, well, you're covering the Devils or your sports channel, MSG Network, we've been around longer, et cetera. So you get a little pride in what you're doing and who you're covering. And then you find out, as you transition from a Ranger fan to a Devil fan, that I might have hated the guy because he wore a different jersey, but they're really, really good guys, right? And so you find out that they're just human beings. So all that adds up to... It turned around completely for me, where I'm totally a Devils fan, have been for a long, long time.
Did you have a favorite player growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I loved the old gag line from the Rangers.
Oh, yeah.
Rod Gilbert, Vic Hadfield, and Jean Rattel, goal a game. So those three, I wore Harry Howell's number playing.
Number 3.
Number 3. I wore number 3 playing for Our Lady Queen of Martyrs in New York City, playing roller hockey. That was on Quads, by the way.
Way, way back. But like Matty, I think we're both kind of historians of the game. We have such respect for those guys. I know Harry Howell well.
Yeah.
As a little kid, I think I caught the tail end of watching him. But you talk about guys, good people, whether it's in the broadcasting, Matty, but we take some pride in our teams, whether it's you broadcasting the games or me playing, or even after the game, you find out guys you hated, I've become great friends with. Because you find out you're a lot alike your competitors. Ty Domi, I'm good friends with him. I used to fight him. I couldn't stand him. That's the way it's supposed to be. Rick Tocchet, with longtime Flyer, Penguin. We battled. Wonderful guy. Rod Gilbert, you mentioned the gag line. I got
Awesome,
to be
dude.
Dear friends with him. Didn't play against him because I was too young, but just a wonderful, wonderful man. He's since passed, but that's what's special, I think, afterwards. I love that part of it.
Yeah.
Where I get to be friends with guys that if I saw them in the restaurant during our playing days, I'd walk out because we couldn't, as they would, because we couldn't fraternize.
Yeah,
because
right.
we didn't want to lose that edge of compete.
Yeah.
Got it. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Puck Drop. A special thank you to Mr. Ken Daneyko, Mr. Loughlin Mr. Loughlin for joining us today here on Puck Drop. Follow us on Instagram, puck_dropped at LHS.source, and our Twitter is at LHS Puck Drop. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and thank you for joining us here from the Prudential Center.